Personal bias and decision making. The average person makes 35,000 choices per day. Now that's a lot of choices. Bias has a main influence in how people make their decisions as it provides people with a starting point. The types of decisions people make also influence how quickly they are able to make that decision. For example, if two choices of a decision are very similar, it is much harder to make that decision rather than if the choices are very different. There are many types of bias, each which play a different role in people's views. For example, some cause an increase in risk-taking, some cause tunnel vision, and some can even help you to make better decisions. These are important to recognize because of the ways in which our decisions change as a result of them. Let's take a look at what some experts have to say. Dr. Lozapone has found that knowing your limitations is crucial so that you do not make rash and reckless decisions. To which she also notes that pushing your limits for an extended period of time proves to be unsustainable. Experts have also found that people need to be able to define their limits by creating different boundaries, which are the lines you draw between yourself and people's expectations of you. This allows people to keep themselves as their first priority. Here are some proposed resolutions. The first resolution presented is that people should use joint decision making. This type of decision making allows for people to have multiple perspectives on that decision. Though a limitation to this may mean that it does not support the original person's best interest because people do not have the knowledge on who that person is. The next resolution proposed is that personal bias should be used to make more informed decisions. This allows people to recognize their limits to benefit them overall. Some benefits include less stress, and they are also less likely to become overwhelmed. Though this may mean that they ignore the other side of the argument, which can create ignorance. The two stimulus sources I used were moral courage and intelligent disobedience in Thompson, Simone Biles, and the most human meaning of courage. These two articles connected over a common theme of decision making, which led to my research question. To what extent does having personal bias positively affect adults' ability to make decisions which determine the way in which they act? This led to my thesis, the fact that personal bias is important and should be used in the decision-making process. That way, people are better able to recognize their limits, allowing them to serve their best interests. The first reason why personal bias should be used is because when making personal decisions, you are the person with the most information on that topic. This means that you know what decision will serve you best. And although this may be considered an extreme example, Thomas and Shaliff note that soldiers are faced with making decisions that affect the outcome of battles every single day. They have to take a situation and decide whether what they know is better or if they should listen to their superiors' orders. This is because times change, and self-serving bias is the type of bias that allows these soldiers to do just that. Because engaging in self-serving bias allows people to make the decision that benefits you. The second reason why personal bias should be used is because in decision making, as you make decisions, you are setting your boundaries, which define your limits. These boundaries help to limit the negative impact on your mental health, which can come from the non-informed individuals who want to butt in. As noted by Chandler, taking on someone else's burden with nobody else to share the weight can lead to a rapid deterioration of your own mental health. In other words, when you don't set boundaries, there are negative consequences. To add, our beliefs and values are what you push for and support because they create your limits. Though, bias can help to make sure that people are not pushing themselves too far by trying to do too much at once. Although there are multiple reasons why personal bias should be used, there are a few reasons why it shouldn't. The first is that it may limit the amount of research someone does and to what width they look at that research, leading to my first limitation. The fact that some may only look for and read about the research that supports their side of the decision. This can create tunnel vision and make people less informed overall. Though there are ways to limit this by staying self-aware and reminding yourself of when you might need to look at the other side. The second limitation is that people may not understand how to create these boundaries. And they may even be afraid to take that first step because they fear what others might have to say about them. This would mean that people aren't really using personal bias. Instead, they're following the leader and using mob mentality. This can be limited by informing others of how personal bias is good. That way, stigma around this topic can be limited. Or people can simply choose to ignore what others have to say and just focus on themselves because they know that's what's going to lead them to the best. The first implication to using personal bias in decision making is that it will allow people to make quicker decisions because they do not need to take time out to consult with others. The next implication is that people are able to set the boundaries because they know what their limits are, allowing them to make the best decision. Overall, people should use personal bias that will allow themselves to put themselves first, even though it can create limited-minded thinking. This is important because without personal bias, many push themselves past their limits and it allows them to create reckless decisions. Therefore, people do need to find a balance between staying open to the other side but not forgetting about their own personal needs. By doing so, people will better accept that bias can be good and more thought-out decisions will result. Overall, people will better understand who they are and how their decisions work. Do you use personal bias? This is my works cited.
Are you ready for your oral defense? How did some preliminary information you gathered inform your research?
So, some preliminary research I gathered was when I was looking at kind of what side of
You can look at me.
okay, what side of the argument to look at, because when I was gathering research, I found that a lot of people kind of focused on what the negative side of using personal bias was, and that was kind of very broad and repetitive, which led me to do more research on kind of what the positive side of using personal bias was, and that had a lot more debate and a wider variety of perspectives.
Okay. And how did you use the conclusions or questions of others to advance your own research?
So, looking at kind of the conclusions of others and what questions they had left over, it kind of helped me to figure out what parts of my research I needed to look for more information on and kind of what questions people were left so I could hopefully answer those. For example, like a lot of people were saying that you need to create boundaries, but they weren't really explaining how. So that's something I found more research on.
All right, thank you very